You're very welcome along to this week's Shot Clock. It is Ger Gilroy against Kieran Donaghy. Every week here, Kieran Donaghy racing into an early lead in the first couple of editions of the 2020 Shot Clock. Last week we kind of revamped the scoring.
That's important to note.
Very important to note. We've got predictions, we've got a free throw coming up where Kieran will go on a rant about something, and then starting things off, we've got the Shot Clock where we get into 3 debating topics. If you make a good argument, you're going to hear a sound that sounds something like this. And if you make a bad argument, which was like basically Ger's Gooch argument last week, you're going to hear something like this. So we'll try and keep score throughout, try and pick a winner. The first topic this week is stats versus skills. Cian Mackey this week talking about the idea that perhaps there's a lot of work done on GPS stats when it comes to inter-county football. Are we getting carried away with this? Is there too much focus on how many sprints you've done, how many hand passes you make, how many successful kick passes you make, and is there not enough work being done with the naked eye in GAA coaching? Kieran, what do you think?
I think there's certain merit to what Cian has said, and I think Cian, having just retired, like maybe myself a year ago, I think stats become a bugbearer of older players when they maybe mightn't be hitting some certain numbers. But I do believe that he is right in what he says. I think there's the level of GPS detail going in now is huge. It goes up in the dressing room after every game. Guys come in afterwards, they want to see what high-speed distance they covered, what distance in general they covered. There's new types of metrics coming on all the time. Stats then are a part of that as well. How many turnovers did you have? How many hand passes did you have? How many foot passes did you have? And look, we can all go out and have a perfect 100% pass rating if we take no risks and we tip hand passes around and play really safe passes all day long. But that's not going to unlock defences. That's not going to help you win a game. And I think there's new stats should be looked at. Maybe something like good decisions. How many good decisions did you make in a game? I think is a much more important stat than a lot of that other stuff that we just talked about. Did you play a long early ball into one-on-one? Yes, it was a turnover, but was it a good decision? Absolutely, it was a good decision. Did you execute the skill? No. What do we need to do? We need to work on that skill. Did you make the extra pass at a time where your team needed the extra pass to create a good score? Absolutely. That was a good decision for the team. What would have been a bad decision? You shooting. Did you go and double team on defence? Did you help at the right time? Did you leave your man at the right time and spot where the danger was? Look at the Dublin goals last year in the All-Ireland final. Players streaming through the middle.
But they're not statistics.
But they're the good decisions. Can you have a stat that's good decisions on your name?
Probably not.
That's your naked eye. That's what you're talking about.
My job? What's going on here? You stealing my lines? What? Shut up. You sit there and you referee.
Yeah.
Well, go give your argument then.
Old Gil Donaghy here couldn't hack it with the kids at training last year, and so he's decided that the technology is the issue. The technology is not the issue. Just before we get started in this, I don't know if everybody understands that most of the GPS systems that you see around the world are actually from an Irish company. They're based in Uri, a bunch of lads from Dundalk who set this whole thing up. We should be proud of the fact that we're world leaders in this, but we just don't know how to use it yet because the technology is too new. What you do need is somebody, as Kieran says, who is sitting there going, was that sprint actually an intelligent sprint? Famously, the offensive linemen in the NFL found out about the fact that they were being monitored, and they would walk around in circles, ultimately leaving little trails as their fat heaps of bones were wearing out the grass.
I did a bit of that near the end.
Exactly, and that's what happens because the managers don't actually know the science behind what they're trying to achieve. Essentially, this should be used in collaboration with players for making the players make better decisions. You're not supposed to be sprinting wildly 40 times a game. You're supposed to be in your top speed 2 or 3 times when you're burning defenders. That means you're actually wasting your energy. Imagine if we'd had somebody teaching Robbie Keane that all that running that he did was a complete waste of his time. He could have been Leo Messi. If you watch Leo Messi frequently just stands there. He is stood stationary while all around him is a maelstrom, and he's working out where the space is. He's doing the calculations in his brain, not wasting energy. This is about conserving energy, and actually, if GPS was being used properly, you would be able to use older players like Kieran and Cian Mackey properly, beneficially, saying, you've got a 15-minute period here where you're going to absolutely go hell for leather, and we're going to lorry ball in on you, or we're going to play ball to the right corner forward, use your sprints properly. We need to learn how to use stats, not be afraid of them.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's actually an issue. I think players are doing a lot of running these days because maybe they feel like they have to, because if they don't hit certain numbers, then it's perceived that they're not working. Of course, there's a lot of numbers, much more numbers now on the defensive side of the game, the tracking, the chasing cornerbacks, which is something that didn't have to be done. But the truest point you said was on Messi, and the great GAA footballers often stand and wait and make one move and get a ball.
Armagh took Kieran Donaghy off famously in the game against Tyrone because he hadn't touched the ball. Not Kieran Donaghy, Kieran McGeeney off in a game against Tyrone, famously in All-Ireland semi-final, and it was the most stupid decision of all time based on a misunderstanding of statistics.
Did he have a GPS on him?
No.
It was
No.
to do with, like, he hadn't touched the ball. I thought, would they not have had them in? Probably not.
I don't think they'd stats.
Second topic today, I think it's pretty even. I'm not sure. I think Jeremiah.
What are you talking about? I'm miles
a
ahead.
1 point lead.
Unassailable lead.
Baseline standards is what we are talking about. This comes off the back of the discussion on Virgin Media Sport on Saturday when Matt Williams was making the point that this should be the minimum for Ireland, beating Wales at home. Well, not so much that, the performance that Ireland put in and the attitude that they showed, that should be the minimum for Ireland. Ronan O'Gara disagreed with him. He said that is absolutely not the minimum. Getting a bonus point win at home against Wales is not the minimum. Is Matt Williams right, though? Is there a sense that actually within the camp, Ireland players are saying to themselves, yeah, this is what we should be doing week in, week out, especially in this year's Six Nations? Jerry, you can lead this one off.
100% correct, Matt Williams here. If you think back to what Roy Keane was saying all those years ago about Ireland and the tyranny of low expectations, we still have it with Mick McCarthy. We still have it. We've had it in Irish football history where constantly managers talk down our ability and our expectations. We should expect ourselves to be better. We should expect ourselves to play well. I can't wait for Stephen Kenny to come in and say, we're going to get the ball and we're going to keep it. I don't think the Kerry footballers once ever went into a game and expected they were going to scrape through. They always thought that they were going to play well and they were going to demand standards off each other. I think Ronan O'Gara might have missed a point when he was saying the bonus point win. He's talking about the results, but no doubt if Ronan O'Gara was in that changing room, immediately afterwards he'd be in that dressing room going, that's exactly how we're supposed to play. We're Ireland. We dominate forwards. We play creatively in the backs. We have offloads. We swarm the ball. We get in the referee's face and we absolutely manage the game. I think as a player, he would have said exactly what Matt Williams was saying. I think there was a good bit of punditry from Matt Williams to go, Ireland needs to reconsider itself when it comes to sport, going, what is the basic minimum standard that we have? Is it a wishy-washy, sure, look, we'll do our best and we'll go out. This is elite sport we're talking about. This is not participation.
I know, but that's what we always say, though, Ger. Like everywhere, every business you go into, Irish people play themselves down. That's our defence mechanism. That's our coping mechanism within the business, within the team structure. Of course, we want to be perfect. Of course, we want to have minimum standards. But I do agree with O'Gara on one thing. I think he said that the game, the last day, was, you know, a bonus point against Wales, who are a really good team, real high standard team. We played really well to get that win. Fellas played. There was moments of magic by players that helped get us over the line. There was also instances where Wales should have had a try and made mistakes that would have made the game a lot closer. And then if the game is a lot closer and we end up losing, is that our minimum standards? Every game has to be taken on its own merits. Every time you play against somebody, it has to be taken on its own merits. You can't just say, this is a baseline minimum standard, because that minimum standard changes all the time. And he was saying, effort, getting up and down, tackling, that's the minimum standards.
Yes.
But what we did the last day, Ireland, was different to what we've been doing all along. There was a clear change of tact from the management. We offloaded more in the tackle. We got it out wide inside our own 22. We were taking on guys. That's different to what Ireland have been doing. We've been put it under the jumper, fall down on the ground, try and get outside the 22, throw it back and kick it dead. That was being the way we played. So there was a clear change of tactics as well the last day, which has to be taken into consideration.
Which backs up Williams' point.
100%. Bayern Munich don't expect to win the Champions League every year. They expect to win the league. Their basic minimum standard is we're going to win the league. They understand that in the vagaries of a cup competition, knockout football, you might not win every time that you play in the Champions League. What their basic minimum standards are, that there's going to be a series of performances that are better than the previous one, and that's layered on top. I think that if Ireland had lost that game but played well, our basic minimum standard was that we were doing all the things we said we would do. And the result then is a window that is dependent on how well the other team plays and factors outside your control.
You're also sitting there going, why are they throwing it outside? Why are they keeping it inside the 22? What are they doing? But when you get a win, it masks everything. When you get a lose, it highlights all the negatives. So it's a dicey game to play. But having minimum standards should be within every team, but they're always kept internal. You're never going to come out and say it. So it was a good piece of analysis.
Exactly, yeah.
I can say Tommy Rooney is keeping score this week, and by all accounts, Ger might be running away with it this week. Just a little preview, but we do have one more.
I need the Kerry judge back on board. Can we get Tommy Rooney struck off?
Here's only by one. What are you talking about?
Only by one, actually, I can confirm. Moving on to the final topic, it's Tyrone. Colin McShane back in a Tyrone jersey last weekend. Conor McKenna potentially coming back for Tyrone in a couple of weeks. We saw Darren McCurry running rings around the Kerry defence last weekend up in Eden Dork. Are Tyrone the best contender to Kerry Dublin? Can they actually break the top two, Kieran?
I think they're extremely dangerous, and I think they can if they get everything right, especially if they can land Conor McKenna back. I don't know what the story, I don't know, is it family reasons? I don't really want to speak about why he's back, but you know, maybe Tyrone played an absolute masterstroke and said, you know what we'll do? We'll send Cathal McShane out. Cathal McShane will go out, infest into the brain of Conor McKenna and bring him back. And now Tyrone will really have a chance. Tyrone played in the All-Ireland final in 2018, and in 2019 they were right there with Kerry. They had Kerry pushed to the pin of their collar. It was 9-5 at half-time. I remember being sitting inside in the Sky studio going, this is deja vu, it's happening all over again. A Kerry team with more stars is being held and being beaten badly by a Tyrone team that are more cohesive, that are frustrating Kerry, that are getting back, they're getting in their ears. They've Paddy Hampsey to come back, they've Matty Donnelly to come back. If they could land McKenna, and he is a game changer with his pace, he's a Jack McCaffrey, he is a game, he opens teams up. Tyrone can go win an All-Ireland with that team, and I think that's...
McKenna hasn't kicked a round ball in 7 or 8 years this stage. Like, he was a minor when he left. This isn't the case of somebody who has been an all-star, who we've seen dominate games. It's also like he's a young guy. You're joking me.
Shut up. Is he got taken off there? McKenna hasn't kicked the ball. He hasn't. I agree with you, Jerry. He hasn't kicked the wrong ball. He's probably tipped around with it. I'm sure he's tipped around with it out in Australia. But they're not banned from having it. But what I would say is Conor McKenna's pace and power and his physique at the moment, he doesn't have to kick a ball at all in a game. If he plays 1-2s and drives through the defences, he will be hand passing it across the square for Darren McCurry to hand pass into the net. That's what he can do. That's his power. That's his pace. That's how dangerous he'll be for Tyrone. This
notion that somehow Mickey Hart has been playing chess while all the rest of the counties have been playing checkers is nonsensical, because if Tyrone were this good, where the hell were they last year? They've completely flopped in the second half.
They were in an All-Ireland semi-final with the game in the balance. They were leading.
They choked like they did in the All-Ireland final.
They made one mistake. They made one mistake, and Paul Ganey, Tyrone should have had a point. They made a turnover. Paul Ganey comes up the pitch, goal for Kerry. Momentum changes. We know how big momentum is in sport. We talked about it last year in Shot Clock.
Here we go.
The big mo is the most important thing in sport.
Exactly.
Kerry got it with about 10 minutes to go. Tommy Walsh came on and changed the game. The Kerry goal. Other than that, Tyrone would have been playing Dublin again last year in the All-Ireland final. So who's to say that they're not the guys to break the Kerry-Dublin dominance at the moment?
Kerry are a much better team this year than they were last year, on the simple basis of the fact that they're going to have a full season of Tommy Walsh. They know how to use them. They've got the advanced mark to do it, and they also have the most singular talent that we've seen in Gaelic football history in David Clifford, who is rising, who is cresting to an absolute superstar status. And O'Shea is going to be much better at centre forward as well, because he's just more experienced.
Can I just say Kenny Cunningham took over the scoreboard duties there for just a moment, and Kieran got 1 point for a conspiracy theory, and Ger got docked 1 point for describing the actual shape of a ball. So if you believe in tangible arguments, the shot clock is not the place for you. Do we have a winner in this week's shot clock debates? We might get to that in just a moment. Kenny Cunningham is in the studio. Kieran Donaghy all day, says Kenny Cunningham in the box. Thank you very much to our guest scoreboard presenter, Kenny Cunningham. He'll be back with us very shortly. Before that, though, it is time for the free throw, because last Friday afternoon, Kieran Donaghy was wondering about, I don't know where he was, maybe home, maybe at work, and all of a sudden he felt the warm sensation of a dagger through his back, because here in studio, Ger Gilroy was talking to Tony McEntee. What point did he put to him, Ger?
Well, so last week we were talking about football, and I was asking the question off the back of the NFL season, are there different types of defence that a GAA team can use, a Gaelic football team in particular? Can you have different types of it? Can you go man? Can you go zonal? Can you go zonal in parts? Can you go man-to-man for different sections? Can you pick a team based on who your opposition are, which is all the type of things that you would expect from an American football team. And Kieran said, yeah, this is absolutely the situation that we need to be getting to. You're beginning to see parts of it. It's there in basketball, and how confusing it can be for a couple of minutes in basketball if, for example, team switches and you're like, hang on a second, we need to do this. Like, why couldn't we do this in Gaelic football? Put that to Tony McEntee. Here's what happened.
So I think, Jeff, first of all, I'm not sure if Kieran could be more wrong in his angle. And I think it's maybe because of his Kerry, and maybe not just his Kerry, but the Kerry approach to defending. Or maybe, in some views, the lack of Kerry approach to defending, in that they try to employ an attacking, attractive brand of football. The reality is, at the minute, is that defending is such an art at the minute. And everybody is trying to explore a different angle or a different view to it.
Kieran Donaghy, you couldn't be more wrong.
I think, look, I disagree with Tony. I think there is definitely maybe two styles of defence to play. I think he's underestimating the power of the athletes from 6 inches up here. I think to suggest that we only know one way of defending, or one team can only do one way of defending in a season or a game, I think it's a bit of an injustice to players. I think players are very intelligent now. I think players do more research. We heard about Johnny Cooper, the amount of research he puts into the game yesterday. A big thing, 2014, we got ridiculed for being, as Tony suggested, that we might know much about defence in Kerry. We made the slight defensive adjustment and we got slated for being boring and negative by keeping our two half-backs back to protect against a very good inside Donaghy full forward line with McFadden, Murphy and McBrearty. We got slated for that. If you look at what we did that day, we tweaked our game plan on a given day. 3 weeks before it, we said, okay, we're going to stop attacking with our half-backs, we're going to stop driving people up the field, and we're just going to hold, because we saw what Donaghy had done previous years, we saw what they did to Dublin 2 or 3 years before that, is they suck you up the field and they hit you with a deadly counter-attack with the forwards that they have. So like for teams, if you're losing a game, and in that same game, Donaghy were losing, they were down 3 or 4 points with 6 or 7 minutes to go, and Kerry were passing the ball. We were passing the ball around the middle of the field and they were back in their defensive zone, which had been drilled into them. That's the way we play. Get back, get numbers. And they stayed in that zone and they moved across and they moved across. Eventually somebody obviously said, okay guys, we have to start pushing out. We're down 4 or 5 points. We have to start pushing up. And what happened is Donaghy came out of their set without any coaching, without any backroom staff, without any ideas about how to do it. They just went ball chasing. And they turned a 4-point deficit into a 1-point deficit at a time where we were really under pressure. And if you remember, we got it back. They got it back to a point. We went back up 2, and they had that famous chance when McFadden fisted the ball off the butt of the post in the last minute, which would have drawn the game because they pushed out after us. So what I'm saying is, of course you can. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you can coach a team to have a set defensive play, a set defensive style and structure about you. That Tony says is right. Every team is exploring. So if every team is exploring, there's obviously different options out there. Why can't you have 1 or 2 of those up your sleeve? Why can't you, with 10 minutes to go in the first half and you need momentum, try and put on a press on a team? I'm not saying a basketball press. I'm not saying you leave fellas open all over the place. But how do you go after the ball? What did we see Dublin do last week against Monaghan? They were losing the game. They were under all sides of pressure. And they pushed up and they put on this kind of press. They went after the ball. Fellas left men outside them. Fellas moved the line up the pitch and they got turnovers and they found their way back into a game. So I disagree with Tony McEntee in the fact that you can't have 1 or 2 or possibly even 3 defensive structures winning, especially in the inter-county game. We talked about Gerard, talked about time that you have with your team now at inter-county level. How can't you have maybe 2 different looks that you throw at teams defensively? And how can't you have a call that you switch from one to the other? Yes, it would be challenging. Yes, there's ways to tweak it. Yes, you may get found out. But you have to have some way that you're playing when you're winning a game, and you have to have some way to play when you're losing a game. We talk about a lot on the offensive side of the ball. Oh, if we're losing a game with 5 minutes to go, how are we going to get back into it? The same goes for defence. And I think teams can, and I think players should be challenged to have a way of thinking that you can be given a call and that you defend a different way for a certain amount of time.
I think that's a fair point. So say, for example, a team is chasing a 6-point deficit with 3 or 4 minutes to go and the 7 or 8 minutes that are coming in injury time. Your defence needs to know how to defend those big balls that are coming in. There's just going to be a lot of balls lashed in around the house. I presume teams train for that. I'm not sure if they do, but if they don't, they should do. And that's just an example of this, except in a smaller, very situational example. There are obviously other examples where you take a big lead and all of a sudden you start to play a bit soft, but that's exactly the time when you should be more aggressive to try and kill teams off.
Yeah, I think there's momentum. Like we see, you see the press working from kickouts, and you see Dublin put it on very, very strongly last year at times in games, and it's intimidating because they're gaining momentum by winning ball after ball after ball. That's the thing with the basketball. When you do press in basketball, it's to get momentum. It's to get yourself back into the game. And I think sometimes that we should look more into that in the GAA. Is it hard to coach? Absolutely. Would it be a challenge to coach? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean you don't try. That doesn't mean you don't challenge players. We challenge players in the gym. We challenge them with their diet, the amount of kicking they do, the amount of running we do. Do we challenge guys enough up here? I think Dublin are ahead of the curve with how much they challenge their players up here to think on the spot and in games.
On to predictions. NBA All-Star weekend. Kieran, you're not overly enthused by this. Team LeBron against Team Giannis.
I predict lots of points. I win.
I think LeBron's team is going to win the All-Star game. I think their starting 5 is arguably best starting five up there with the best starting fives ever to start an All-Star game. You've got LeBron, you've got Anthony Davis at centre, you've LeBron at power forward, you've Luka Doncic, the teenage sensation, playing at the 3 spot. You've Kawhi Leonard, the best defender and probably the best two-way player in the league. And you've got James Harden. And if James Harden actually played like a proper point guard and passed the ball, which he doesn't do for Houston, but he might do in an All-Star game, that 5 is scary. Every one of them can beat you any type of way. So I'm going to go with Team LeBron.
Does this concept work? One of my abiding memories as a kid is queuing in Thurles for Jack O'Shea's autograph as a child. It was after Matt Connor had his accident. The All-Stars played a Rest of Ireland team and it was sensational. They played hurling and football on the same day, so it was a huge crowd. We went down to it and you were out on the pitch afterwards to collect autographs, and like those two teams, as far as I remember, I was 7, like absolutely went at it. Certainly that was my sense of it. It was a competitive game. Both sides were trying to put on a good show, and it never evolved into anything else after that. Like it's kind of what an interprovincial game could be. It should be an all-star weekend where, you know, everybody gets money
and doesn't play any defence.
It doesn't play any defence. Well, maybe you do play a blanket defence and you try and win it. Ulster win 1-0, and that would be like the perfect. But like, is there not some way of making these competitive to the point where it's worthwhile?
Yeah, I think so. Might be a topic we might get into more next week, but I think absolutely teams should go cut at it. But yeah, I think who have you got?
Can we steal? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you both got Team LeBron.
Have you going with Team LeBron as well? Okay.
There's hurling this weekend. Galway against Tip. I think it's probably the standout fixture. Ger, who are you calling in this one?
Tip.
I'll go with Galway. I think Galway need a win and they need a bit of momentum after a poor showing in Limerick 2 weeks ago. So I think Galway will get it done at home, and I think Joe Canning's back, which would be a big help.
And you're going to the Bridge on Monday night, Chelsea against Manchester United?
Yeah, Chelsea. I'll go with a Chelsea home win.
I'm going to go with a draw.
Okay, very good. Enjoy Stamford Bridge, Kieran. That's it for the Shot Clock this week. We'll have more from Kieran and Kenny Cunningham very shortly. Tom Malone will be with us in studio soon too. Before that, here's Ronan O'Gara on the Six Nations.